Hello and welcome back to the last lecture in this course. And in this lecture we are going to create probably the most complex animation so far. We are going to make the reload animation, and there's a bit more going on with the reload than we have done previously, so there's a bit more complexity to it. For example, we are going to remove the mag from the weapon, and we're going to make some interaction between the hand and the mag and so on. So it's a bit more complex, but we're going to walk through it. So, right, so in the last lecture, we made the fire animation. Looks like this, but we are not going to use that. So let's go ahead and create a new animation first for the gun. So make sure you select the gun in pose mode. And let's go to the gun idle pose and duplicate it. And let's rename it to gun reload. And let's also do this for the arms. So we need a new animation for the arms. So select the arms rig in pose mode and go to FP idle pose, and let's go ahead and duplicate it and call it FP reload, like that, and make sure you save it as always. Okay, and usually when I start making a reload animation, I usually start by placing out the main poses. And so the main poses would kind of be like, the initial pose would be something like this. You kind of bring up the gun towards the camera and remove the mag. So it would be this, and then you would remove the mag. And then it would probably be another pose, kind of like this, when you insert the mag, and so on. So we're just gonna start by making the first pose. So let's skip ahead a few frames, around frame 6. Sounds good. And let's just position the gun in the pose that we want to use for that when we remove the mag. So let's just go ahead and place it out here. And this pose doesn't have to be just like this. It could be, I mean, you can get a bit creative with it and just imagine what it would look like when you're removing the mag. What would that pose look like, you know? It's important to keep in mind that you don't want the gun to block the center here, because if you're making this for a game, for example, then this is where the crosshair would be, and you don't really want to block the player's view. So if you put the gun like this, for example, that would be a bad placement, you know, because the player wouldn't be able to see anything. So it's a good idea to always keep it kind of to the side like this, and keep it out of this center space. So I think something like this is pretty good, and maybe a bit back. Right, something like this looks pretty fine. And right, so let's check it out. There's a transition here to the takeout mag pose, as we can call it. And now the next part would be to remove the mag, right? And to remove the mag, we want to start by placing the default mag keyframes here, so that the mag stays attached to the pistol up until this point. So go ahead and duplicate these, and here we can start animating the mag. So let's skip ahead a few frames. And right, so make sure you select the mag bone in post mode. It's a bit hard to see it because of the hand, but it's in there. And let's just drag it out like this. And now if we play it, we can see that the gun is moving into the pose, and it stops, and then the mag is pulled out, right? And of course you have to mess with the settings here. You have to kind of offset the keyframes a bit, maybe fix the speed, stuff like that to make it look good. But that's the general idea of it. And we can just keep animating the mag here. So what I usually do is I move the mag down a bit so it's like off screen, kind of like this. And because we have a very specific camera view here, we can actually just place the mag slightly below, and it's not going to be visible to the player. So it's kind of like a little trick, I suppose, you could use to you know, hide the mag and make it look like the player is actually grabbing a new mag instead of just spawning a new one. You can reuse the same one. And let's go ahead and fix these ones too. So as we can see, the arm looks a bit weird. It doesn't really matter what the arm looks like here because it's off camera, so you can't even see it. But I think it's a good idea to actually make it look kind of proper in here as well. So let's just move the arm poles a bit and something like that. And let's go back to the gun rig and let's see what we got so far. So mag pose pulls the mag out, and then puts the mag out of the screen, outside the camera. And that's a bit slow actually. I would probably make that a bit faster. So let's just, okay, something like that. And let's also add some more frames here to the timeline. So let's just increase this a bit to around 100. All right, and let's just copy the mag out pose here and place it around here. And let's make a new pose here. Let's call this one the mag in pose. So this would be the actual when you insert the mag. So it would kind of maybe look a bit different. Maybe rotate it slightly, like so. Just adding a little bit of variation here so it's not just the same pose. So it's a small change, but you know, not the same still. And let's go ahead and animate the gun so it moves back into the gun. Or sorry, animate the mag back into the gun. And what I usually do for this is I use the default pose for the mag, which is when it's inside the gun. So it just kind of perfectly would go back in there, right? So duplicate those, and then we can actually see that the gun or the mag goes perfectly into the gun. But I mean, obviously we have to kind of fix it because there's some bit of clipping going on. It doesn't really move perfectly. So let's go ahead and add some keyframes to kind of fix this. And if it's hard to see, we can actually hide the arms. So we can go up here and hide the arms to see a bit better what's going on with the mag. kind of like this. It doesn't have to be perfect, as long as it looks good here. I mean, that's what matters really. So, and I would probably add some rotation too, make it look a bit more interesting. So it's not just like a straight mag just going back in perfectly, you know. Can make it look a bit more interesting by adding some rotation to it. And one thing we can also do is we can make it hold this pose for a bit, so it shouldn't just slide in perfectly right away. We can actually hold this pose for a bit. So let's duplicate this and then make it go back in over maybe 1 or 2 frames. So basically what this does is it kind of gives the effect of some force being applied to it, you know. So you kind of stop here and you're like, it's kind of stuck, and then it goes back in perfectly. And it kind of gives the impression that there's some force being applied to it. And of course we have to also animate the gun to make it kind of react to that kind of move like this a bit. And I also think the mag is moving a bit too fast. So let's actually make it stay down here for a bit. So let's copy the mag, what should we call it? Mag outside of screen pose here. And copy that. And let's move it a bit here. So it actually kind of stays down here for a bit. That's interesting. Why is it moving? Right, because of the gun. Okay, never mind. So basically, since the mag is parented to the gun, if we move the gun, of course the mag is going to move as well. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. And let's just increase this a bit. A little bit more. So you kind of want to make it wait a bit so it doesn't just look like the mag just goes back right away, because what we want is kind of like the illusion that the character is grabbing a new mag or something, and so there should be a slight delay in the grabbing mag pose, I suppose. But yeah, looks pretty cool so far. And that is the very basic movement for the mag. Of course, this could be improved and polished a lot more, but I think it's good for the basic movement of the mag. So let's also check out the gun movement here. We kind of want to keep this pose up until the mag goes in. So we can actually move it over here. And then after the mag has been inserted, we want to move the gun back into the default idle pose. So let's go ahead and copy those initial keyframes here by right-clicking and Shift-D and just dragging. And we can see that it goes back. So let's just move those a bit. And now we have like the very basic like structure here for the reload. So it's like a very basic version of it, but I think this gives a good idea of kind of like the different components that make the reload. So it'd be the mag out pose, the mag in pose, and back to idle. So it's like sort of like 3 different steps, I suppose you could say. Right, and now I want to add some more detail to it. And we can also worry about the hands later. We won't do them right now. I'm gonna focus on the gun first, and then we're we're gonna focus on the hand and the hand positions. So I kind of want to make some kind of motion here when you pull out the mag, so that the gun kind of follows down a bit, like that. So let's duplicate these and check, okay, where does the mag go out? So around here. Let's add some Z movement in some way as well. And we can see that, okay, it kind of bounces down a bit now. But I do think it goes back up a bit too fast. So let's move that. And we can actually move this one as well, so. And we're gonna be changing the timing a lot as we kind of work through it, so there's gonna be a lot of changes as we go along. And let's actually move it up a bit. And we can also rotate it slightly, so like this. And let's also offset the rotations a bit. So let's go ahead and select these rotation keys here. And let's just move them a bit, like this. And then we get that kind of nice offset effect here, that the rotation comes after the motion. So it doesn't look so stiff and robotic, I suppose you could say. And let's just move them a bit more, see what that looks like. And that looks pretty cool. Maybe a bit too much, actually. Yeah. So we got some simple motion there. When you pull the mag out, it kind of does a little rotation, a little bit of movement. And right, and then it moves into the mag in pose. We can actually make this pose a bit more unique, a bit more different, because I feel like this change isn't really, it's basically the same pose. So let's try and change it up a bit. So like that. And then we also have to copy these and place them here so it doesn't move. And what we can add here is we can add some, actually we can use the curves for this later, but first we want to make the insertion bounce, I suppose you can call it, when you insert the mag. So we kind of want to, basically what we did here, but the other way around. So we want to make some kind of movement when you put the mag back in. So let's copy this pose. And let's find where the mag actually goes in. So it's around here, 33. And let's go a frame after the actual insertion. And let's move it up a bit. Just like we did with the mag out, but well, the opposite way. All right, we can actually move it back down a bit too here. And let's increase this too a bit. All right, so that's a very simple kind of bounce here. We can also add some X rotation, just like we did here. This kind of offset rotation. And without the offset, it looks a bit too synchronized, a bit too stiff. So let's go ahead and select the rotation keys here and offset them just by one frame. And even just by moving them one frame, we actually get this kind of nice offset look here, which is, it really adds a lot to it when you use the offset method here to to add rotation. So now if we check out the whole thing here, all right, it's starting to shape up pretty well. It's a good base here. I do feel like this part here is a bit stiff, so we'll look into that in the curves later on. And this last part could probably be a bit faster. All right, and let's go ahead and fix the hand poses now as well. Because I feel like when you pull out the mag, the hand should kind of move down a bit and actually kind of make it look like it's grabbing the mag. So let's go ahead and select the arm rig and make sure you're in post mode, and let's just scrub through it here. And we can actually go to this pose when we see the mag being removed. We can select the hand and whoops, and just kind of rotate it the way we want it to, the grip to look when you're pulling out the mag. And it could be kind of like this, just like you're grabbing it, I suppose. And since you won't really be seeing this too much on screen, it doesn't really matter what it looks like. But it's good to have like a nice base pose here. But like I always say, as long as it looks good on camera, like it doesn't really matter, you know? Because what matters is what you see on the camera and not what you see here off screen. And we can probably move that up a bit, so it kind of moves down there right away. And then it's being removed. So let's just copy all these and move them back a bit. And then about here, we kind of want to change into like a different pose for the hand, for the when you insert the mag. And it can be slightly different. So it can be it could be sort of like this maybe, like you're kind of pushing it in with the palm of the hand, so kind of pushing the mag in. So let's just place that out. And maybe make the fingers a bit more open too, so kind of like this. And it does look a bit weird here, but we'll see what it looks like here. All right, that looks weird indeed. So let's actually make the fingers a bit more closed. I think that would make a bit more sense. And feel free to test different poses that you can create yourself and kind of be creative with, and see what looks best, of course. Okay, I think that's a pretty good pose for that. We might want to animate the fingers too, so it kind of close them, or it looks more like you're moving the fingers a bit here. So let's place out some keyframes for the thumb here too. And let's also animate these a bit. let's check it out. All right, we can actually move the thumb a bit so it reacts a bit later. Let's make it a bit faster too. All right, I think that's much better actually. So now it kind of looks like the hand is actually, you know, interacting with the mag. There's some finger movement going on, which looks nice. And then of course at the end here we want to put the hand back in its default pose, right? So let's go ahead and duplicate all of these, all of the initial poses, not this one, and just move them to the back here. And we want them to move back there at the end, so around here we want them to move back. So we can actually copy the hand pose from over here, from this pose, so that it doesn't go back immediately. Right, so something like this. So now that the hand moves back to the idle pose at the end, and it still does the sort of mag interaction. Don't forget to save. Very, very important. And right, that's some basic hand animations there. Could definitely be improved, but I think it's good for now. So let's go back to the gun rig in pose mode. And I think it's time to start adding some, making some nicer details here, add some polish to it. And I'm gonna be using the curves for this. And yeah, so let's start with the curves here. Make sure your gun root is selected. And you can expand it here. And let's start by looking here, okay, what could be improved? So first of all, I think all motions kind of look stiff right now. There's not much, they're very like in place, you know, they're not really moving. There's no extra detail to them. We can definitely improve that. So let's start by checking out the Y location. And there's all these keyframes here that we don't really need. So we could probably delete some of these as we go along. So let's start by moving it back a bit. And also, so basically what I just did here is I moved the gun back a bit, and I also added some upwards movement here, and I kind of offset them so they're not on the same key. And basically that makes the motion a bit more, feels a bit more natural, a bit more rounded, as you can see here. So instead of just arriving at the same point at the same time, they kind of arrive at different times, which makes it look a bit more natural. And let's go ahead and delete this one because we don't need it. So press X and delete keyframe. And let's just keep checking what could be improved. Right, so I feel like this pose here really, it kind of switches back into this pose really fast. And there's no like extra motion. So let's check out the rotation here and see what's going on. I think it's the Y quaternion. Right, so we can add some extra motion here. And actually put it a bit sooner. And make it move down a bit here, perhaps. And yeah, so there's some extra movement. We obviously have to fix the kind of up and down motion as well. to match this rotation. But yeah, I'm just gonna mess around with the curves a bit here and see what looks best. And I'm pressing Control and left clicking to add new curves, by the way, or to add new keyframes. And what I did here is I added another keyframe roughly at the same rotation as this one. So it kind of keeps the same rotation, and then when you pull the mag out, it rotates pretty fast, pretty quickly down to this rotation here. So it kind of gives that effect of like some force being applied when you pull out the mag. So it kind of rotates down quickly. And we actually might not want this to rotate up so quickly as it does here. So we can probably delete these and add some kind of hold here. Right, and then we can move on to the insertion rotation here. And we can use this same method as here. So we can actually hold the pose or the rotation pose for a bit. And then when we insert here, we can move it up quickly. So it kind of gets this kind of quick rotation upwards. And then back down again, pretty fast too. And that's a bit too much, actually. And I think that's pretty cool. There's a quick little rotation here at the mag insert. And then we can kind of ease it back into the sort of default rotation, right? So let's go to the default rotation here, move it out a bit, and let's copy it too and add another keyframe over here. And as always, I kind of like doing these little wiggles at the end, so it doesn't just fully stop. It kind of does like a little shake or something. So I usually do that at the end. And yeah, we kind of have to add the other motion to see exactly how it looks, because currently it looks a bit weird. So let's work a bit more on the locations here. So let's check out the Z location. So basically what I'm doing is I'm moving it down first. So it kind of goes down initially and then up. And that's a bit too much actually, it looks kind of crazy. So let's move it down a bit here and also move it up here pretty quickly. All right, so we have some downwards movement here. When we pull the mag out, moves down. Can actually increase that a bit. And we might want to add some kind of extra motion here as well, so it's not so stiff during this this kind of waiting period here. So we kind of want to move this down a bit. So there's some motion going on. Because otherwise it could look a bit stiff if it's like completely still during this time here. And let's move it up slightly here. And just like we did for the Y rotation, we kind of want to add some wiggles, some wiggle shake here at the end. And I usually do it some like this, so it's kind of like a down and up curve, and then it goes back into the default keyframe. And that's some pretty weird timing there, so let's move those back. And you kind of have to mess around with these until you find the right timing. And that's too slow. We might need another keyframe here, kind of like this. Okay, that's pretty good. So now we kind of get the little back into position shake here at the end. And it's kind of going down first, goes a bit up, and then does a little shake. And right, let's keep looking at these location keys. I feel like the X needs to be improved a bit. So we can add some extra motion here to the X-axis. Make it move out a bit more to the right. And then when you take the mag out, it could go to the left. Right. And let's do a little shake here at the end too on the X-axis. And this is basically how you kind of have to work. You just have to keep adding more details and see how it looks, and keep modifying it until you get like a nice looking animation, basically. So you basically just combine all of these curves eventually, and hopefully it looks good. And if it doesn't, you keep working on it, you keep improving it. That looks a bit weird. Let's fix that. I think that looks pretty cool, actually. The kind of back into place wiggle. There we go. And I also noticed that the X, or sorry, the Z here looks a bit off. I think it's this one. Should probably I think it has to move up a bit faster here. So something like that. And I do feel like this initial takeout is a bit too fast. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually scale up the keyframes to make it a bit slower. And I can do that by selecting the keyframes here and seeing like, okay, which part do I want to slow down a bit? So it would be these keys right here. So let's select all of these and move them out a bit. And then select these again and place the timeline at the first one. And then we can actually press S1.1. Sorry, we can press S1.3 and that's going to scale them up a bit on the x-axis. And that gives us a bit of a slower motion, which I think looks a bit better. Actually, I think it's a bit too slow. Let's try like 1.2. And move these back. And that looks a little bit better. We still have to mess with the curves. I think we kind of broke the curves here for that. So I'm just going to go ahead and go through these. I think it's the rotation that's a bit off, maybe. So let's check out the X. Okay, that's a bit better. Let's actually make these a bit more insane, a bit more exaggerated. All right, and let's add some. I don't really like these ones when it's like completely straight, because this means that it's completely still on this rotation. So I always try to kind of add a little bit of variation, even if it's like kind of small, but still it does add a lot to the details. So I would probably move this down a bit like this and make sure that there's no like actual flat lines, kind of like this one. We don't really want this. Sometimes you do need them though, if you want to make like sharp, sort of sharp motions, like this. If you wanted to rotate quickly, you kind of need to flatten it out before the big rotation. But in general, I don't really like these flat lines because they do look kind of stiff. And let's add some wiggle, some shake here. Could be a bit more, I suppose. Can barely tell. Well, there's a bit of stuff going on here. Could actually increase it quite a bit, I think. We can just kind of mess around with the timing here too, like move them back and forward, see what it looks like. I think that's pretty good. I do want to add some bounciness to the Z, so a bit more, so let's scale those up. Kind of like that. Not too crazy. All right, and let's just keep going through the rotation keys here. I think we haven't worked on the Z rotation. So let's check that out, see what's going on. And it's gonna get pretty messy here in the keyframes, so That's why it's really good to work in the graph, because if you're just working with keyframes only, it can get pretty messy. As you can see, like there's a lot of keys going on here, so it's kind of hard to tell which is which. Which is why I prefer the graph editor. It's much more clear, kind of how the motion looks. So I would recommend always working with the graph editor when you can. And I think that's pretty good. There might be a bit too much rotation here, maybe, actually, on the X. So let's check that out. Oh, it's this one. Yep. Let's move that up a bit. And I'm just going to keep looking through the up and down here. Right, and sometimes you just kind of have to mess around for quite a bit until it starts feeling right, you know. But I think it's getting pretty close. I do think that this rotation is a bit off right here. And that's even worse. Okay. Alright, I think this rotation is pretty good. It's kind of a bit delayed on the x-axis, which looks cool. And then there's also some weird, I think it's y rotation here. Yeah, I think it's this one. That's a bit weird too. Let's look into this. Right, so now it's a bit more stable. It's not as shaky. It was a bit too crazy before. And yeah, I think it's starting to look pretty good. There's still some stuff I want to add. Let's add some wiggle here too, some shake on the z-axis, so on the rotation. And I basically just copy this keyframe here and place out a few more by pasting it. And let's go ahead and add some wiggle to it. And this one's kind of subtle. It could be a bit hard to tell, but it's like the side-to-side rotation. Make it a bit smaller. And maybe fix also the Y rotation here is a bit weird, I think. It's a bit too much maybe here. And maybe even on the x-axis, make it slightly less. All right, so I think that's pretty good. maybe actually, man, I'm never happy with these, am I? Move it down a bit more on this one. Yeah, I mean, you could keep doing polishing this for quite a while, so I'm not going to get too much into it because this video would probably become too long. But yeah, I think it's pretty good for now. It's a good enough example, definitely, to show here. Actually, okay, let me just fix one last thing here. Let me fix the Y location a bit, make it a bit more interesting. And let's add a cool wiggle at the end here. So kind of make it go a bit forward before going back. I usually do this when kind of putting the gun back in the idle pose. I usually move it forward a bit and then kind of faster back, kind of like this. I think it looks pretty cool. It's like one of those little nice nice details you can make. All right. Actually, that's a bit too much, isn't it? All right, I think something like this is pretty good. It feels quite snappy. It feels pretty a fast reload, you know, and yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. And I think the mag animation looks fine too. We don't really see it too much on the mag out, and then on the mag in, we can see that it goes into the gun like this. So now what is left is to add some more detail to the arms. So let's select the arm rig in object mode, and then switch to pose mode. And what I usually do during reloads is I actually take the trigger finger off the trigger just for added detail. So I would just move it out like this. So it kind of looks like that. Could be a bit faster actually. And then let's just duplicate this one. And move it all the way back. And then let's duplicate the default pose here. So the finger goes back at the end too, like that. So now if we play it, we can actually see that the finger is taken off the trigger. There is a bit of clipping here. We could fix this by animating the bone itself, but I think it's fine for now. It's really fast anyway, so it's a bit hard to tell. Right, so it happens over one frame. I think that's okay. And if we scrub through it, ignore all these arrows, by the way. And we can see that it goes back at the end. And if we play it, all right. And I think we can also add some detail to the hand itself. So where is it? Hand control. All right. Let's just make it move back a bit later. And here we can actually see that the thumb is kind of clipping through the hand, which isn't good. So let's move it out a bit. And we can actually move this keyframe a bit, like so. And Actually, there's quite a bit of clipping going on, so we should probably fix that as well. I'm just kind of moving the finger out of the way here. And then when it's out of screen, we can move it down on the mag, like so. And I do think that these look fine. Yeah, I think the fingers look fine for the rest. Let's check it out. Right, and let's also add a little bit of camera shake. And kind of like we did with the fire animation. So we added a little bit of shake, just like a very slight shake on the x-axis. So it would be on the up and down axis. And I would probably add the shakes on like the different actions. So when you, for example, pull out the mag, I would make a shake here. And I would also make a shake here. So when you insert the mag, there would be a shake too. So let's go to the camera bone, and let's duplicate the X rotation keys. And let's place out 3 there, and then 3 at the mag insert, right? And let's go up to the graph editor here and zoom in on the X. Whoops, the X, not the W. All right, and let's try and time this with the mag removal here. So I'll probably put it around here as the weapon goes down. We also move the camera down slightly. And so it should be animated over 1 frame. That's usually what I do. And then it moves back over like 3 frames. And we can actually copy this default keyframe, insert it over here, and add a little bit of wiggle downwards. And you might want to retime it as well. And that's way too much shake. So let's scale it down a bit too. And we can actually copy these. So let's just select all these and copy, Control C. And we can delete these. We don't need those. And let's press Control V. So we now have two shakes here on the curve. And let's locate the insertion here. So right about there. Now let's align it like this. And we also want to invert this. So instead of going up, we want it to go down. Or actually, right, so instead of going down, we want it to go up. So let's select these two and press SY and -1. And that's gonna invert the curves. And that gives us a nice little shake there. It's very quick too. So you can actually just make it a bit bigger. I mean, it's all personal preference if you want a quick shake or slow shake or whatever you might like. Just kind of mess around with these curves here. I usually prefer the faster shakes. They feel a bit better in game too. If you actually export these to a game, they do feel better when they're fast. Like quick and fast shakes are usually the best way, in my opinion. Let's just make this a bit smaller. And yeah, we got 2 little shakes there. And I think that's all we need for this one. We probably shouldn't have more shakes. Also, you don't have to use the camera shake method. You could also just animate the camera a bit more smoothly, maybe follow sort of like what the head would be looking at during a reload. So you could maybe rotate it a bit to make it look at the weapon like this, if you want. That could also be cool. But yeah, you just mess around with these and kind of see what looks best, I suppose. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it for our reload. It would need a bit more polish, but I think it's, like I usually say, for this course, I think it's a very good example, and it is definitely complete enough. And yeah, I hope you found this useful, and I know this was a lot of information to take in, as this was probably one of the most complex lectures so far, and there's a lot of stuff happening here on screen. So feel free to rewatch it if you didn't really understand it, and yeah, just keep watching it until you understand it and it makes sense. And as always, you can also check out the source files that are all in the course folder. You can find all of the source files, all the Blender files for each step, so you can check that out. And yeah, I think that's it for this lecture. We have a nice reload now. We have some fire animations. We have some idle animations and walking, which is pretty much all you need for a basic FPS game. Of course, there are other stuff you might need, like running and jumping and stuff like that. But this is, I think this is a really good start, like a good base for any FPS game to have these 4 default kind of animations. And yeah, that's it for this lecture. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next part. Bye bye.